At the age of 15 years old, I had no idea that I was about to enter into the absolute worst period of my entire life. When I was 15, I met somebody and I entered into a relationship, no exaggeration, that almost led to me being sex trafficked. Now, thankfully that didn't happen. It was many years of chaos, let's just put it that way. And it was one of the most horrific and shameful things I've ever experienced. I mean, being with that person obviously almost ruined my life. It almost cost me my life in more ways than I can even imagine. And the aftermath of that has been nothing but painful. When you go through a really shameful experience, when you go through an incredibly traumatic and abusive relationship, the person on the receiving end of that, the victim of abuse, is left with massive amounts of guilt and grief and shame and terror and all of these really horrific and tragic emotions and experiences. And if you're not able to get help for those things, it will result in the rest of your life just being filled with pain. Now, not everybody has the same experience as me. Some people have not as intense situations, and I've had clients who that would be a joke for them to have something like that happen because they've just experienced so much worse. This is not to compare. This is to say that every single one of us who experience trauma have our own story. We have our own experiences that happen. We have our own relationship to that experience. And unfortunately, the far majority of people who experience trauma do not get help. They do not reach out for help. They do not reach out to get to experience any sort of healing because the shame that is bound within them becomes so pervasive that it ends up just consuming their entire life. And that almost happened to me. I didn't want anyone knowing what happened to me. I didn't let anybody really know the truth of what was going on when I was with this person because number one, I was terrified of him, and number two, I was so ashamed that I thought that I deserved it. I got myself into this mess. This must be what I deserve. This must be what I'm worth. This must be what is meant for me. And it took years for me to finally seek real help, to seek guidance, and to learn to unburden that shame. And I mean, it's still there, right? Like when you go through something like that, even as a therapist, even as a licensed mental health counselor who teaches people how to get through this, I still experience shame. There's still moments and times and memories that come up where I think about what happened and it's like, I can't believe that happened to me. I can't believe I let myself get into a situation when all the red flags were there at the beginning and I just couldn't see it, or I didn't want to see it, or the circumstances that I was experiencing in my life led me to just do it anyways. What I'm going to dive into in this video is how do you heal from that? What do you do when you go through something so unbearable like that? Whatever your story is, because your story matters regardless of its intensity, regardless of the severity, regardless of if someone else had it worse, it doesn't matter. It matters because it happened to you. It matters because all human beings matter. And so we all, if we are carrying pain and shame and harm, we owe it to ourselves to heal from that. You too. So how do you do that? It ended up, as a CBT therapist and as a trauma-informed therapist, it's going to be a little bit different for every single person, but the principles are very much the same. And there's 3 fundamental factors that go into this. Now, the steps might look a little bit different based on your circumstances. So like I have a client right now where we're doing something called cognitive restructuring, where we're going to be taking her through the memories of these experiences and processing them and how they impacted her and what happened, so on and so forth. I have other clients I was working with a client who was in a severe car accident, and what we were doing for her is something called prolonged exposure, where I was going to have her learn how to get in the car again, learn how to drive again, learn how to feel safe again in those experiences while navigating the trauma symptoms that come up as a byproduct and navigating the avoidance that inevitably comes up. So based on your trauma, it's going to look a little bit different. That's why working with a trauma certified therapist or a trauma certified coach is going to be so vital. So if you don't have that already, send me a DM, let's work together, or find a trauma certified therapist or coach that feels best for you. But regardless of the approach, there's 3 fundamental things that have to happen for you to heal. And this is what I had to do to heal from this terrible thing that had happened to me. This thing that I thought was going to stain me for the rest of my life, that when people heard that this happened to me, they would have thought that I was the dumbest person on earth to have not seen the signs of this and to have stuck with it. Now, thankfully, that didn't happen and that hasn't happened, but I thought it was going to, so I was stuck in shame. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it, but it didn't. And so these 3 steps and navigating through these are what allowed me to eventually see that over time, learn to heal, and then learn how to have safe relationships again. Number 1, I'm just going to list them and then I'll go through them. So number 1 is understanding why it happened. Number 2 is self-forgiveness. Not other forgiveness, not forgiving the person, self-forgiveness. And number 3 is healing from the story of why it happened and then what happened in the aftermath, the core beliefs and the rules and attitudes and assumptions that ended up happening as a byproduct of the situation and of the trauma. When someone goes through trauma, when someone goes through a severe event, more often than not, what ends up happening is they're just shaming themselves for the fact that it happened. I can't believe this happened to me. I'm so stupid. I'm this, I'm that, right? Those destructive core beliefs end up coming up. And it's like, I'm a terrible person because something like this happened to me. So they become very self-critical. What a lot of people don't do is really ask themselves the question, why did this happen? What happened to me? What were the circumstances that happened in my life that led me to end up in a situation where something like that could have happened? Now, this is very different than victim blaming. This isn't to say you caused it. This is to say, what were the circumstances that led me to making a choice like that, or to doing something like that, or to being in a situation like that where this horrific thing happened? All we're doing is, because I'm just terrible, because I'm this, because I'm that. But that doesn't give us understanding of how did you end up in a situation like that? What happened to you? What happened that led for something like that to happen? So for me, I grew up as a child. I had mental health challenges from a very, very young age due to a number of factors. And I developed a severe core belief that I'm unwanted, that I'm unlovable, and that I'm never going to be enough, and that no one was ever going to love me. So when someone gave me attention and told me that they loved me very fast and was all consuming and just wanted me around and put me on this pedestal when I felt neglected for a really long time, of course I got sucked into it. I didn't have adaptive resources and influences that could have helped me get out of something like that, or to not be susceptible to falling into something like that. I had things that happened that led me to doing that. Now, that might not always be the case. If someone's in a terrible car accident and it's the other person's fault, that's why it happened. It wasn't because you did something. It's not because you're so bad and you should have known. Why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? Understanding why it happened. The truth of the matter is, sometimes shit happens. It's why I hate the phrase, everything happens for a reason. Go talk to a trauma survivor. They will tell you that there is no good reason why something like this should have happened to me. Now, I understand people use that phrase because it helps them get through situations, and that's fine and dandy. But to suggest that there is some grand reason why atrocities happen, that there must be some greater reason, for a lot of survivors of trauma, that feels very, very invalidating. To say that God or the universe or whoever wanted something terrible like this to happen to me, when more often than not, it's more related to chaos theory than it is to manifest destiny. We have to understand not that some greater cause made it happen, but really, what happened to me? What were the circumstances of my life? What happened that led me to be in a situation where something like this could have happened? Not because I caused it, not because I deserved it, but because terrible things might have happened that led me to trust people, or things might have happened that led me to go down this path, and then as a byproduct, these other horrible things happened. So really, truly understand what happened that led for something like this to happen. Now, this is where step number 2 comes in, is the self-forgiveness. Not others' forgiveness. I actually wrote an article about this on the Evolve Ventures website. I'll link the article down below. And the article was talking about the truths and the myths of forgiveness and these destructive narratives that we end up being told. One of them is that you have to forgive your abuser. You have to forgive other people in order to heal. There is no truth to that. And the data actually suggests that it's not required. What is required is self-forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for not knowing better. Forgiving yourself for making mistakes, forgiving yourself, forgiving that version of you that had absolutely no idea what they were getting into. Forgiving yourself, forgiving whatever part of you believes that it was your fault. Forgiving the fact that you are human, because we're all human. And we are all susceptible to tragedy. I don't know why terrible things happen to people. I don't know why karmically or, universally these terrible things happen. I don't. But I do know that we all are capable of giving it a different type of meaning. That's step number 3. But it has to come as a byproduct and in tandem with step number 2 of forgiving yourself for not being capable, or for not knowing, or for not having had the guidance or the love or the resources or the help or whatever that led to something like this happening. I had to forgive myself so much for the fact that I let that person do that to me. That I was so naive and unaware and broken because of my upbringing that I was susceptible to a person like that being able to manipulate me and then abuse me and then potentially lead me down that horrific path. I had to forgive me, not him, me. And it made such a difference in working with now this third part, healing the narratives, healing those past situations, healing from the root causes of maybe not having effective communication or boundaries or other stable relationships or a sense of purpose and meaning, or healing from the truth that sometimes horrible things happen, like getting into a car accident and we don't know why. Healing and rewiring and reworking the core beliefs that we develop about ourselves as a byproduct. I believed so vehemently that I was a horrible person, that I was disgusting, that I was worthless, that nobody would ever love somebody like me. And I had to work through that. I had to help myself heal from that because it wasn't fair to me. It wasn't fair to keep living life believing these things that were not true. But my past made me think it was, and the beliefs I developed about myself put me in situations that then reinforced it. The sad and uncomfortable truth is that not always, but for a lot of people, we are partly responsible for these things that happen to us. I was naive. I let him in, and he did those things to me. I'm not blaming myself, but it's empowering to know that I have autonomy. I have choice. I can now do something. I can make myself stronger. I can get myself skills and tools and resources and resourcefulness to make sure that nothing like that ever happens to me again. I equip my clients with that, and they end up healing and having really wonderful transformations as a byproduct, because they start to see that although they can't change the past, what happened, it was horrific. There's so much that they can do now. They can change now. They realize that the beliefs that they developed about themselves weren't real. They weren't true. And then they heal. And then they move forward. And the same is possible for you too. You deserve to understand really what happened. Not the contorted narrative, but really what happened. Why did it happen that way? Forgiving yourself for not knowing better, or for not being able to do better, or not being strong enough to fight them off, or whatever the thing is that you need to forgive yourself for, the thing that's causing you so much shame. And then to take the steps to heal those narratives, to heal those core beliefs that you developed, and to give yourself a chance at a beautiful, wonderful life. Because it sincerely is possible for you too. Like I said in the beginning, you cannot do this work on your own. You need to work with a trauma certified therapist or a trauma certified credentialed coach to be able to navigate this. Not because you're not capable of it, but because we're not supposed to heal on our own. We need other people. And the best thing that you can do is give yourself permission to go work with somebody who can help you get through this. If not me, then somebody else. But don't waste more precious time dealing with this shame of this terrible abusive relationship that you were in, or whatever this terrible circumstance was that happened to you. Give yourself permission to heal and start today.